With all the changes to collegiate athletics, one of the single biggest disappointments is the loss of the Carolina JV basketball team. Nobody better to help us unpack it than a man who coached the team for 5 seasons, Coach Jerod Haase.
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Tuesday, September 23rd, 2025. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade. You're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Special shout out to all the everydayers who are here, all the great members of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, and of course, our great Locked On Tar Heels insiders as well. Welcome in, everybody. Fun show today. As I said in the cold open, we're going to be joined by former assistant coach at Carolina and head coach of the Carolina JV program, Coach Jerod Haase. Let's get right into it. With all the changes to college athletics, one of the single biggest disappointments to me, quite frankly, is the loss of Carolina JV basketball. I grieve it, I mourn it. And to help us unpack that even more today is a man who has coached that very team himself, the once head coach of Carolina JV basketball, Coach Jerod Haase. To be joined by Coach today, who is entering his own new phase of life, dropping off his own offspring at college, which is a crazy full circle thing for you, Coach, I'm sure. If you're unfamiliar with Coach, just a few bio things. Actually started his career at Cal playing alongside Jay Kidd. Crazy stuff there for those who might have thought he only played at Kansas. But then Coach Haase did go off to Kansas to play with Coach Williams from 94 to 97. Then eventually joined the Kansas staff, 99 to 2003. Came with Coach to Carolina and coached there all the way through 2012. And then set off on his own down to Birmingham. And some great barbecue down there at Saw's Juke Joint, one of my favorite places in the South. And then off to the West Coast, where he's originally from, to be the head coach at Stanford from 2016 to 24. So Coach and I are going to be talking his time at Carolina, the JV head coach, remembrances at Carolina, and kind of get caught up on what's going on in Coach's life now. So Coach Jerod Haase, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Ah, man, it's so good. So let's start. Let's go to Chapel Hill and your time there. Yes, as an assistant, but I want to zoom in specifically on the JV program, because what a just neat, unique thing that Carolina just kept going for so long. And so, as we get into this era of the House settlement and all the new stuff with scholarship and new scholarship numbers and roster things and stuff, has unfortunately done away with Carolina's JV program. But I want to ask you, Coach, why do you think it made sense for the University of North Carolina and the athletic department to carry on that JV program for so long while so many other institutions had already done away with it?
Well, there's a lot of easy reasons for schools and universities to cut their JV program, whether it's cost, whether it's, just resources, facility issues, and that kind of thing. But with Carolina, it was always in the DNA, and it's gone back for so many years and impacted so many lives. And there were positives that were just unbelievable, not just for the JV program, but ultimately for the varsity program as well. But it was, the JV program was what was right about college athletics. Mm-hmm. And, you didn't have the fame and the fortune and, you're on national TV or anything like that. But in terms of having an opportunity for a select few to put on a Carolina jersey to represent the school, to have an opportunity to walk into the Smith Center and be a part of the program and have the dream of maybe moving up to varsity someday. But the relationships were real. The coaching was real. It was an unbelievable opportunity for me and many, many great memories and relationships that lasted a long time.
Man. For those who might not be aware, what years specifically were you involved with the JV program?
So I guess 03 to 12, I was head coach 5 of those years. Every other year, I was kind of moving back and forth, and just great memories. And, so many of those guys, maintain in some form or fashion, relationships. And but during those 5 years, the head coach, I just had an absolute blast.
That's so did you and CB kind of flip back and forth year after year? Is that how that worked?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Man, that's so fun. And for those who might not be aware, CB McGrath, who was also on Carolina staff, you guys were roommates at Kansas. Is that correct?
We'd known each other for a long, long time. Yeah. Roomed together at Kansas and then on staff together for many years. And so certainly a close relationship.
Man, that's so cool. And before I forget to say, big thanks to our guy, Coach Bill Robinson, not Coach Steve Robinson, but our guy, Coach Rob, here on the show for putting Coach and I together to be able to have these conversations, because obviously Milligan is a school that this hurts them as well, because they've been able to head up and play the Carolina JV team many times. In fact, the JV team, I think when Coach Davis was at the helm, actually went down to Johnson City to play at Milligan one time. And so, Coach, I think maybe like the big picture question to ask here is, what do we lose with the JV program going away?
I think it's from an outsider, or for somebody just that doesn't understand and hasn't been really involved with the JV program. Honestly, they probably say you don't lose much. You lose an opportunity for a few guys, but having been in the mix, I do think you lose a lot, and you lose a lot for those student athletes. The dream of coming to Carolina and just being involved in some way, and the new world we're in. With NIL and the transfers and the house settlement and all the changes that have occurred, I think you've lost a lot of the old identity of what college athletics was. This really is professional athletics for those sports that have, continued on. I think you're going to continue to see the professionalism of the game. And with that, you lose a lot of things. I mean, how many times have you heard about people talk about education recently in college athletics? I mean, you don't.
That's a great
question.
question.
About money, and how many people nowadays talk about relationships? I never hear that word in today's day and age. How many people talk about development? You don't. You talk about making money. You talk about moving up to the next step or finding what's ever best for you. So the relationships, the development, the education aspects of all of this, I think, have been lost. And the JV team, while it's not, known on a national level necessarily to the common person, really represented all of those things that were right about college athletics. And I think you lose much of those things that were near and dear to my heart, and I think were the fabric of what college athletics should be.
That's so well said, Coach. I mean, for all the things that we think of that are lost, I feel like the loss of this JV program and as you said, part of the DNA and the fabric, the very fabric of the University of North Carolina falls away as this is lost. And, I mean, it's so interesting to think about how many coaches, and not just to Carolina, around the nation and in various sports, who are so good relationally and in a living room and connecting with families and doing it for the purposes of education, as you're talking about, are just gone now as it becomes so much more transactional. And that I bemoan that in a big way. And so, Coach, then I think kind of the next question is shifting it from the student athletes and the universities to you personally. How do you feel like your time, those years jumping in and out of coaching this team, formed you both, not just as a coach, but as a person?
Oh, it was the best, and it was also the worst because, you get into the office at 8 a.m. and, finish the varsity practice at 7 and then start JV practice for a couple hours. And, and all three of my children were born at the Carolina hospital there. So I had, 3 young kids, or 2 or 1, depending on what year it was. And it was a challenge, from a family perspective of balancing everything. But it was also for me professionally, just such a great experience. And, as an opportunity to, I remember vividly my first game, and I'm sitting there and, the game didn't get off to a good start, and I'm sitting there looking around and, kind of thinking, hey, we should call a timeout. I'm not looking around. Who does? Wait, that's me. I'm the one that can call a timeout. And, just learning how to be a head coach. And it was such a huge advantage for me once I got my Division I head coaching job at UAB to understand what it's like to call a timeout, to communicate with the officials. I mean, I learned a lot. I mean, with the officials, first couple of years on the JV team, everything became personal to me, and it ruined me as a coach. And I finally realized I had to be able to, if I want to communicate with the officials, be able to let it go and get to the next play. But if you're doing those things once you get your first head coaching job at the Division I level, that's a steep learning curve, and it's when you're under the bright lights, it's not a good thing. So I learned so much from an X&O standpoint, from running practices, and applied many of the things that Coach Williams obviously taught me for many, many years. And as the head coach, the relationships with the players are a little bit different. How you communicate, the halftime talks, the pregame talks, all those things are new and unique and different, and obviously extremely applicable once I was able to get my first head coaching job at the Division I level.
Man, and that's such a good point. So many, typically coaches are just thrown into the fire. Like, you got to do it at some point, right? And you had that great benefit of having that opportunity with the JV team. And that's so critically important. I love that. And you talked about, I'm also laughing as you talk about, when is it time to call a timeout? Well, I think Coach Roy would have told you never, but, and then you just keep on trucking with that. Speaking of which, similar to Coach Dean Smith, Coach Haase is both a Jayhawk and a Tar Heel. I want to find out some of his greatest memories from both his time in Lawrence and in Chapel Hill, and we'll talk about that coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about Square, you need to know that your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that truly make the neighborhood feel like home. Whether it's the local sports bar that's packed on game day, maybe it's the coffee shop where they know your name and your order the second you walk in the door, or maybe it's that corner deli that's been serving your community for literally decades. Man, these are the places that keep a community together. And when neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. Here's what that looks like. You're not just spending money there to support the business. You're also supporting the people behind the business and the community around it. And these local spots are what make the neighborhood always feel like home. And so many of them run on Square. A great example in Chapel Hill, Hawthorne and Wood, man, they use Square to make it all happen. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses all around the globe. And you can go to square.com/go/locked-on-college to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You're going to be glad you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. This episode is also brought to you by Game Time. College football is back, and I could not be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets to these things, man, that can feel like more of a battle than the actual game itself. The lines are interminably long. There's hidden fees. You get to check out and the prices go way up. That's why you got to use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to you, the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. Honestly, it's faster, it's cheaper, and so much less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. And I love that you can find views from your seat right there in the app. Coming up in 2 Saturdays, Carolina is hosting Clemson, both of whom are off to not a great start. So now you can find tickets for as cheap as $86. That's a zone deal in the upper sideline. But maybe you want to get closer to the action for just $12 more, $98. There is a zone deal for the lower sideline, somewhere from section 100 to 110. Great deal. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms apply. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. We said it earlier, but Coach Haase came over with Coach Williams from Kansas to come to Carolina in that 03-04 season. We know a national championship a year, and stayed all the way through that 11-12 season, and then heading down to Birmingham there at a smart time when I think half of Carolina's team left to go to the NBA at that point after the 12 season. No, going down to coach the Blazers down at UAB. And so, Coach, in that essentially decade span there, I just curious some of your fondest memories of your time in Chapel Hill.
The ones that really mean the most to me and stand out the most are the relationships. But for the podcast and the stories, there's probably some specific memories I can throw out there, like Marvin Williams hitting the game-winning shot against Duke. The Smith Center, there were a lot of great moments and loud noises in there, but I remember that one when he got the offensive rebound and the putback, and the place went absolutely nuts, and a great comeback late in the game. But with all of the guys, the opportunities to work with them, and obviously so many have went on to the NBA, but also a lot of them just have been successful even outside the basketball court, and have done a lot of great things. And the other part was with the staff. For me to have all those years with Coach Williams, to learn, to grow, and to have a relationship that we're very, very close. And I think of him as a father figure, as a mentor, as obviously a coach, and everything I've done, and honestly, everything I have really goes back to the opportunities that he provided to me, and then the lessons that he taught me as well. So, it really is endless in terms of the stories and the relationships, but on the court, I sure remember that Marvin put back, and there were some championships, and it was so much fun when I was there, because Coach Williams did empower me, do some of the fun things. I helped with the banners in the Smith Center when there was a kind of redo of the banners, and replaced the banners with the newer version. And I remember the national we got this huge national championship banner, and we laid it out on the floor, and they put it up there, and we looked and we said, "Oh my!" And it was tiny. Once it was up in the rafters, I think it was like 12 feet by 20 feet. Up in the rafters, like you can barely even see it. And so we had to reorder, new ones that were about, 5-10 times as big. And, I was part of a group that really put the museum together, and the basketball offices. And, there are just so many pieces of being a part of the Carolina family that I really hold dear to my heart.
Oh man, that museum, man, it's just breathtaking. It's crazy to be a part of. I love that banner story. That's so good. So like, what did you, from going from playing for Coach Williams to then coaching under and alongside of him, what did you maybe learn as a coach about him that maybe you didn't realize when you were playing for him?
It's a great question. I don't know that I have a great answer. When I was a player, obviously everything was very organized and prepared. I suppose that, as a player, you don't realize the depth of, and the time that it takes to get to that point. We kind of saw the final product of, hey, here's practice, here's what we're going to do today. But the thought process, the film watching, the process of getting everything, kind of that finished product, that we would see at practice or see in games. I knew there was a lot of work, but maybe I didn't realize how much that he put into it and the staff put into it to really give us the best chance to win.
Man, that's so fun. Like, and thinking about, we talked about CB McGrath, you're both teammate, roommate, and eventually coaching together. Guy you're playing alongside, like, do you ever in a million years think, we might just keep hanging out together and coach together forever? Like, how fun is that to get to be coaching alongside a guy that you've known for so long?
No, it was great. I mean, I remember I was a year older than him, and when he came on his first visit to Kansas, he was about 140 pounds and 5'10", and I was thinking he's going to play pickup with us. He might get squished out there by some of these big guys, but he was an elite competitor and a heck of a player. And then obviously as a coach had so much success as a assistant with Coach Williams and all the national championships and a head coach. And so it was, a ton of fun. And anybody that knows CB knows his humor and how much fun he is to be around. And there were a lot of lighthearted moments over those almost 20 years, really, when it was all said and done.
Man, that's crazy. 2 decades. That's a long time. So obviously you've been a head coach now at UAB and out at Stanford, back out on the West Coast. And with all due respect to both of those institutions, which are great programs, like phenomenal, quite frankly, there's just, from a basketball standpoint, there's just something different about programs like Kansas, like Carolina. What is it that sets apart those two institutions? You, Coach Smith, you've both been there. Is it the connection all the way back to Dr. Naismith? Like, what just makes these two schools and programs so special?
Yeah, there's a variety of things. Number one is sustained success for many, many years. And with that, now you have a tradition and a history that's really unmatched in so many ways. when you think about Kansas and Carolina, you're really getting back to the roots of the game, to James Naismith and Fog Allen, and then obviously with Coach Smith. And in my office when I was a head coach, and still today, I have a picture of James Naismith with the basketball and talking to Fog Allen, and then the next picture is Fog Allen at the Final Four, I believe, was coaching Dean Smith, and then Dean Smith and Coach Williams, in the Smith Center, and then Coach Williams talking to me. So for me, there's only 4 pictures back to literally the roots and the foundations of the game, which is pretty awesome. But that's what I think the Carolina fans and the Kansas fans both think as well, is that the game is so much of the history all the way back to the very beginning is a part of their history. And for both programs, a sustained level of excellence for so long, and then a fan base that's very passionate, very knowledgeable, and then players and coaches that have done so many great things. And the game itself has been improved upon largely with these 2 programs and fan bases and players and coaches.
Man, that's a good word. And gosh, just tracing that lineage, it just maybe in the same way that the fog would do, it brings some chill bumps to me. I don't mind saying I'm sitting where I'm sitting now, about 2.5 hours south of Lawrence. And so I'm feeling the vibes coming down to me here, Coach. I absolutely love that. Man, I just, the legacy of all of it just ruminates in my head, and it's tough to wrap your head around, really. And, but Coach didn't train you up just to stick around his side for the rest of your life. He trained you up so he could send you out. And so that's where we want to go with Coach next. What was it like to branch out on his own, heading down to Birmingham? And then, we talked some about the landscape of college athletics right now, but I'd love to get more specific thoughts from Coach on that, and get caught up on what's going on in his life post Stanford and what things are looking like. We'll do all that and hear about author Jerod Haase, all coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about Mazda, who crafts cars for those who do more than simply drive. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes, man, they sweat all the details. And Mazda, they're trying to bring that same intentionality to how they craft every single model. You can feel that incredible Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents all the way to the available Napa leather upholstery. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Because with Mazda, everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to those intuitive controls and more. Like the Tar Heels and their players, Mazda sweats every single detail, because when you make every move count, impossible, that becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. So following his time at Carolina, Coach Haase went down to UAB, to Alabama Birmingham for 4 years, and then 8 years as the head coach of the Stanford Cardinal. Don't get that S on the end, one of the few schools in the nation that is a singular mascot. I love it. I'm here for it. Coach, what I want to ask you is, how did your years alongside Coach Williams, and quite frankly, the rest of the staff, and your time coaching JV, how did that prepare you to be, if I can almost use a biblical term here, it's like sent out to branch out on your own to go be a head coach at those 2 places?
Yeah, it's amazing. Once you do leave, you realize everything was so thoughtful, well thought out, and in how to run a program. There's kind of 2 ways to look at it in my mind as a head coach. There was the X and O's, which fairly early on, I kind of had to realize, hey, we probably need to adjust some. We don't have necessarily the talent level that we had at Kansas or Carolina. And, there may be some fundamental things from an X and O standpoint. We adjust some. And I did that. I don't know if it was right or wrong, but I felt like for it to give us the best chance to win, it was important. But the foundational pieces of how to run a program, I think, stick with me today, and really didn't ever waver from those things. And it was, the relationships. It was how Coach Williams treated people. It was the foundations of, how you watch film and treat people on staff, and how you delegate certain things, and how you have to handle certain things. But how he ran a program from top to bottom was unbelievable. And I was sitting, right there, first row, watching one of the greatest, if not the greatest coach of all time, do all these things. And so how to run a program was instilled in me. And then, when I got to UAB and then at Stanford, I probably maybe did too much tinkering with the X and O's and that kind of thing, but it was always something that I always felt very confident when I was running a program because I had such a great foundation being with coach.
Man, how do you do that? Like as you get out and say, okay, I want to inhabit the things that I've learned well, but I need to be Jerod, right? I need to be Coach Haase, and I need to figure out who I am and how I want to do it. What's the balance like of figuring out how to lean on the foundation that's been set for you while being your own coach? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I was with coach 4 years as a player, 13, I think it was, as a staff member. So 17 years. And one thing with Coach Williams, he is strong in his convictions. There was a certain way we were going to play ball screens. We knew we were going to play fast. You knew we were going to rebound. We were going to be man-to-man defense. But we were, very strong in what we believed. And Coach Williams was very strong in what he believed as well. And he did such a great job recruiting that we generally had, the best talent or one of the teams with the most talent and really high character guys. And it was a system that just worked so well, and he was the best at doing it. And he believed in what he was doing. Now, when I got to UAB, we were a program that was probably very middle of the road in our conference. And I remember wholeheartedly about 10 or 15 games into that first season, we just lost a game, and everybody on our staff was, watching tape, and I was in my office just devastated, and because we were playing fast and we were playing, really doing everything that we did at Carolina and doing all the same plays and the principles and everything like that. And my 3 assistants came in and shut the door and said, "Coach, we have to talk because we don't have the personnel to deny, out at half court because we're getting beat and they're getting layup after layup after layup because we don't have the personnel to be able to do that, and if we're not the most talented team, we may not be able to play as fast as you want to. And, you did Carolina until we get those pieces in place." And so that's where I kind of go back to the X and O standpoint of, maybe playing a little bit slower, maybe playing a little bit more zone, maybe mix things up. But the bottom line is my foundation, I've always felt was very, very strong in terms of how to run a program. And then from the X and O standpoint, trying to figure out what was best for the personnel and best for the team that I had.
Man, that's good. And then after those years, the 8 years at Stanford was I was so sad for you guys in 2020. We were having a year, and then COVID, just messed that all up. And then we have all the years after that. And then interestingly enough, Coach Haase's last year at Stanford was the last year of the Pac-12 before they came into the ACC. And so, Coach, having had, I guess, a bit over a year now, what have you been up to? What's life looked like for you post-Stanford?
Well, it's been pretty awesome, with the kids. I said all 3 were born in Carolina, and I just yesterday dropped my oldest one off at college, and which was a kind of an amazing experience to have him out of the house now. But being able to drive my kids to school and pick them up and watch all their games and be around them has been an absolute blessing. Now, having said that, I do think I have a little more in my tank. I'm excited to get back to working at, if I can find the right job and the right fit. I think there's some things that I can add value to a program or to some kind of hopefully university and then to the student athletes. So that phase, we'll kind of figure out as time goes on. But for right now, spend a lot of time with my family, golfing a little bit. I've done some work with ESPN. Hopefully I'll do that again this year. And then the other thing I've done is really taken stock and reflected on what I've done well, what I've done poorly, what I want to do moving forward. What is my purpose? There's not something that most people get to do. Most people get to work and they kind of work until they retire and then move on their way. And to have this sabbatical, to be able to think about, why am I doing this, or what do I want to do? Why do I want to do these things? What can I improve upon? But really to take stock and have that is an unbelievable blessing. And I've kind of taken it slow. It's not something that there's going to be one answer that I'm trying to get to or anything like that, but it's going to be a process that I've gone through, and it's been invaluable.
Wow. That perspective is insane, Coach. I love that. And so what's funny is I wanted to ask you next more just thoughts about the current landscape, but I actually want to fuse what you just said with that, because it's like this combination of the world keeps changing in wacky ways. And I don't mean like the world, I mean the college basketball world. So how do you infuse what you've been processing over the past year plus with, hey, and obviously, you were part of a transfer portal NIL world at Stanford, but even as it keeps developing and now with the house settlement as well. So how do you infuse, here are the new things I want to implement with creating a sustainable and successful program in 2025 era?
Well, it's a great question. I don't have my final answer yet because I'm still working through it. If you would have asked me a year ago, I might have said, do you know what the new world of effectively professional athletics that college is, that we're not talking about education, we're not talking about relationships and development like we talked about earlier. Do I want to be a part of that? Does it fit who I am? Does it fit my core values? As time has gone on, I think the idea of players making money, I don't think is necessarily an inherent bad thing, but is there a way that I could serve my purpose of, wanting to develop leaders and develop people? I think there can be a synergy there, and I still am working through exactly what that means, and it's, is it possible to develop relationships knowing that maybe sometimes it's 9 months instead of 4 years? The answer is probably yes, but maybe it looks a little differently. Are you able to develop leaders, even though it may be a shorter amount of time? And I think the answer can be yes, but I think you have to look through things in a different landscape. Can you talk about education when people are transferring in and transferring out? I believe you probably can, but it may look a little different, and the conversations may be different than what they were in the past. So that's what I'm trying to get my arms wrapped around. Is it's not just, can I get a job and coach? It's fundamentally, what do I believe in? And do those beliefs, is it possible to fit into the new landscape of effectively professional basketball?
When you figure out the answer to that, I want to talk to you again, because I'd love to know what it is. I mean, seriously, Coach, I think that's the question everyone's trying to get to right now is what does that look like? Is it a reevaluation of it? Is it just baby bathwater? Now we got to do a whole new thing. And so I love the ways in which you're processing that. And I'm grateful to you for taking that time to process it. And as you said, what a gift to you that not many people have ever in their professional lives to be able to do so. Last thing I want to ask you about is I was talking to Coach Rob. I was like, tell me something I need to ask Coach Haase about when we talk. He said, you got to ask him about floor burns. And man, this is so fun. Floor burns inside the life of a Kansas Jayhawk that you and Mark Horvath wrote together about the 96-97 Rock Chalk team. What was that experience like? And what about the book?
It was a great experience. And it was, essentially a diary of my senior year. And I knew that, going in, the senior year was going to be a special one. We had a tremendous amount of talent and cohesion. It was really a neat group with a bummer of an ending to it. But Mark Horvath, as you mentioned, phenomenal guy, was a high school coach in Indiana, presented this idea to me. And I told him no 3 or 4 times, and he was persistent. And at the end of the day, I said, it'd be pretty cool, even if it doesn't turn into a book, just to have this to be able to share with my kids and grandkids someday, because again, I knew it was going to be a special team. And there were a lot of things that I think at Kansas I'd love to, have in writing and on paper. So it was a great project. And, we finished up, and the plan was to get it published. And every publisher said no. It was either too big of a project or too small of a project, or it didn't make any sense. And so I went overseas and played professional basketball for 2 months, and I made $10,000. And I came back and knew I didn't want to play anymore. And Mark had said, hey, we're not going to get this book published. He's like, the last thing we can do is self-publish it, which basically means effectively you go to like a Kinko's and say, hey, print this for us. And we do everything. We just handle it all ourselves. And we actually did that. And I took my $10,000 from overseas, and we printed 3,000 books, and we didn't know if we'd sell any. And it was over Thanksgiving weekend, and we sold all 3,000 that weekend. And we told everybody at the printing press, print as fast as you can. And so we took a month between Thanksgiving and Christmas and literally did book signings everywhere in the state of Kansas, and ended up selling over 40,000 copies. And it was just an unbelievable experience. And a great, kind of a great story about, even though the season didn't turn out how we wanted, I think there were a lot of great things out of it. And the book, once we kind of had it finished, nobody wanted to do anything with it, but we stuck with it and made something good out of it.
For those who don't happen to maybe remember that Kansas team, and you're crazy if you don't, we're talking not only this man we're talking to here, Jerod Haase, we're talking Paul Pierce, we're talking Rafe LaFrentz, we're talking Scott Pollard, we're talking Jacques Vaughn, by the way, now back on Kansas's staff with Coach Self, Ryan Robertson, Billy Todd. I mean, it's insane. And one of a multitude of teams at Kansas that to this day, I do not know how they did not win the national championship. 30, what you guys had just that one double OT loss to Mizzou heading into the postseason, right? That was the only loss in the regular season.
Yeah. And unfortunately, not that it's always a team game, but I broke my wrist the first game of the year, and so I got my scar right there to prove it. And towards the end of the year, it wasn't standing up real well, and we played Arizona, and we struggled guarding them, and they kind of caught fire at the right time. But overall that season, that year, there's obviously an ending that stings to this day, but it was also something that the memories from that team and that experience were pretty unbelievable.
That's well said. That Arizona team that ultimately went on to win the national championship in between Kentucky's two in 96 and 98. That was a special team, Coach. I love going back and watching it. So glad you were part of it. And I also have no clue how you played an entire season with bones in your wrist not together. That makes zero sense to me. So you're a bigger and better man than I am. Way to go. I'm proud of you. You guys, big thanks to Coach Jerod Haase for joining us on today's show. As always, if you've not subscribed to Locked On Tar Heels on both video and audio, do it right now so you don't miss a second. Reminder, we are now less than 6 weeks away from the beginning of the regular season, Monday, November 3rd, when Carolina hosts Central Arkansas. Going to be great stuff there. If you've not joined the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, we'd love to see you in there. It's a great community of Tar Heels fans who hang out and are together all the time. If you want to go deeper with Locked On Tar Heels, you can be a Locked On Tar Heels insider, where you get free access to all of my stats, charts, data, record books, stats that I'm making up, all of that kind of stuff. That if you want to get in on that, it's free when you are a Locked On Tar Heels insider. As always, we want to say, man, it is a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk again tomorrow with our next player preview episode, but until then, peace.